Hi, this is Stuart Nachbar with Educated Quest. I have a special guest this afternoon, Lawton Long. Lawton is a rising senior in chemical engineering at the University of California, Irvine. And through my work as a college and graduate school advisor, I came to meet Lawton and learn about a website that he co-founded called ChemTalk, which is going to be the subject of our discussion this afternoon. ChemTalk is a very unique platform, and I would recommend visiting it at chemtalk.com because it is a tutorial site for high school and college chemistry. That was the hardest subject I took in high school. Not necessarily because the material was hard, but because I had such a bad chemistry teacher. And in fact, I'll admit, I graduated high school a long time ago. It was the only subject I did not get at least a B in 4 years of high school. And I can blame the teacher, I can blame me. But on the other hand, if I had a tool like ChemTalk and people had told me about it, I might have gotten at least a B in chemistry. So Lawton, thank you for joining me this afternoon.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You're a co-founder of the site with
Yep.
others, of which one has completed an education.
Yep.
The rest of you are still in school.
Hmm.
First, what was the inspiration? And all of you are spread out
Yep.
around the country. What was the inspiration for all of you? How did all of you come together to start the site?
It's kind of funny you say that. The Kim Talk actually started as a conversation in a driveway where we where we were thinking, we're like, isn't it weird how you go up to somebody and you say, yeah, I'm getting a degree in chemistry or chemical engineering, and their first response is, oh, chemistry, it's super hard, right? You must be really smart. Or, oh, chemistry is so hard. I didn't do good in that. I think it's boring. Or they make a Breaking Bad joke, right? And that's generally the only way a conversation heads when you tell somebody you're in chemistry, right? So that's how it started. And we were like, if we can start something, we can 100% change the perception of chemistry, because you don't need to be a super smart person or whatnot to at least have a fundamental understanding of chemistry.
Can I realize students can watch and chemistry experiments take place. They can listen to
Yep.
experts who obviously have been excited about the field. Is this something kids do at home?
It Not anymore. Unfortunately, people used to do these at home, but now it's kind of like a dying art, right? Kids do not do chemistry experiments at home anymore, and it's sad because there are a ton of perfectly safe chemistry experiments that you can expose your kids to that pose very little to no risk at all.
What would be an example of one that would typically be in a high school chemistry class anyway?
Right. So one that I guess would typically be in like a high school chemistry class is the teacher might bring out a sample of gallium, for instance, right? I mean, you can take gallium, you can put it in your hand, and it'll melt in your hands. It's a liquid metal that will melt in your hands, right? And that's something that you might see in high school. But you can do that at home. I mean, it's perfectly safe. Gallium won't hurt you, and you can you can buy a sample of gallium for relatively cheap and show your kid, hey, it's you can actually have a liquid metal that melts at a very low temperature, right? There's tons of experiments like that that you can do.
And for the site, what has been the audience? Is it teachers? Is it high school students? Is it
Hmm.
college students? Is it fairly new professors who've gotten jobs at schools where they have to have developed the teaching skills? Who is
Hmm.
your audience?
Our audience really is everybody right now. We do not discriminate in the sense that any skill level, any sort of educational level is perfectly welcome on our website. We have information for people of all backgrounds, all ages, anything.
And how do you reach out to grow an audience?
The way we reach out to grow an audience is through a very non-traditional means, right? A lot of chemistry nonprofits, at least the ones that we know of, don't reach out in a virtual manner, right? Because that's where a lot of kids and younger people are these days. They're on the internet, right? They're not in person. They're not in lecture halls. And our main our main thing is we're trying to reach these people on a platform that they feel comfortable with, because that's how you're going to reach them and get them to learn a subject and be engaged in it.
And you have people studying chemistry, especially high school kids who never learned it before.
Mhm.
Who would you reach out to instruct them? Who would you reach out to?
To instruct high school kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess to instruct high school kids, I mean the best, I mean at least through our site, I guess the way that we instruct high school kids, we have a lot of tutorials. We have a separate YouTube channel just for tutorials on very basic high school level um chemistry knowledge, right? So we have acids and bases tutorials, we have organic chemistry tutorials, we have all kinds of very simple tutorials that can teach high school students chemistry, and that's kind of what a lot of people are looking for these days.
And have teachers visited the site and given their comments and reactions?
We have gotten a few teachers, quite a few teachers actually, who visited the site. We have a lot of college professors who visited the site and given a lot of great input, and that's kind of what's formed and molded our content on our website.
That's an interesting point. Now, chemistry textbooks, my impression of them, like I said, it's been a long time since I took
Mhm.
chemistry. They're kind of intimidating looking.
Right, right, very intimidating.
Could a textbook publisher work with you and your colleagues?
Yeah, I mean, we're obviously open to any sort of collaboration with a publisher of some sort. I mean, the biggest thing with traditional chemistry textbooks is the fact that they focus more on educating somebody for a test or for an exam rather than educating them for the sake of educating them on chemistry. And that's the route that we're trying to avoid. We're trying to get people passionate about chemistry as opposed to just preparing them for a test, for an exam, or something like that.
Do you find that in high schools, like when you've talked to people, teachers, parents, students, that too much of instruction in chemistry is around passing a test?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's basically all chemistry that's in high school or even tutors, for instance, right? A lot of it is regarding passing a test. I mean, with a tutor, right? Obviously, that's their goal, right? But
I understand.
you need to excite someone's passion for chemistry first. If you can't excite someone's passion and get them engaged and want to learn new information, then they won't do it, right? So our goal is to get them excited about it to the point where, oh, now I can go out and read a textbook and actually enjoy what I'm doing, right? And then the test, they'll pass the test on their own at that point.
Is chemistry taught, at least from what you've heard,
Mhm.
differently than, say, math or other sciences?
Um, at least from my perspective, I feel like chemistry is taught too much like math. Um, and that's kind of the downfall is a lot of people don't like math, right? A lot of people struggle with math, and chemistry a lot of times falls into that same general umbrella as math because there is a lot of math when it comes down to academics, right? Chemistry does involve a decent amount of math, but you don't need to be a math wizard or anything like that to at least have fun and enjoy what you do with chemistry. So yeah, 100% math and chemistry do kind of get lumped into the same category a lot of times.
Do for for high school in advanced chem or AP,
Mhm.
what is the highest level of math that a student should have attained before they take those classes?
As long as you're proficient in algebra, right? As long as you can do basic algebra and arithmetic, I mean, that's basically all you need for. I'd even say a lot of college level chemistry. If you can just be proficient in algebra, you'll be perfectly fine with chemistry.
So you would not need to know geometry, algebra 2, pre-calculus, calculus.
Maybe a little bit of geometry. Pre-calculus is not super important with chemistry. A lot of it's just very basic, general algebra. There's not a whole lot. There's a little bit of geometry, but there's not a whole lot. It's mostly just algebra and figuring out oh, if I have X amount of this, how much do I need to make this, right? And you just kind of work your way around to find the answer that way. That's all basic algebra.
Now you're studying chemical engineering.
Hmm.
How would you compare the level of mathematical knowledge in chemistry through Chem 4 in an engineering curriculum to
Right.
Physics 4 in an engineering curriculum?
Well, chemical engineering is a very unique field in the sense that it's not just a chemistry major, right? Um, Chemical engineering requires, if you're doing chemical engineering, that is means you need calculus, differential equations, you need a lot of math, and you do use all of that math in chemical engineering. Um, but but I guess when you compare it to physics, it's actually probably relatively similar to the amount of math you do in a physics major. I think physics would be a little bit more involved, but yeah, if you're doing chemical engineering, you definitely need to be proficient at calculus at some point in time.
Now, in your curriculum, the upper level, what would be in the junior year, the upper level chemical engineering courses that you're required to take them for the degree?
Yeah. So you'd have to take momentum transfer, which is like dealing with fluids and how they move through pipes and stuff like that. You'd have to take mass transfer, which is probably the hardest class you'll take in your chemical engineering curriculum. And then you'll take heat transfer, which is how heat transfers from one object to another. So as you can see, they're all both transfers, right? So they're
Right.
both transport phenomena, but they're dealing with different types of movement.
And are those the courses that kind of make or break someone in the major?
Yeah, I'd say mass transfer is the one that is probably the biggest gatekeeper for a lot of people in a chemical engineering major. It's a very difficult course, but if you work hard and you put your mind to it, you will 100% get through it.
And that's taken in the first semester of a junior year?
That'd be taken in your third. Well, I'm on the quarter system at UC Irvine, so that'd be taken in my third quarter of
Uh,
junior year,
so
which
that
is
would
what
be
I.
the beginning of a second semester at a college that runs out
Yeah. Yep.
semesters.
Yep.
So by then, you're in the major.
Hmm. Yeah, you're in
So,
the major at that point.
as much as you might feel you're going to get kicked out, you got to stay in.
Yeah, you gotta push through and drive and get it done. Yep.
And are going back, let's say, to someone who's a sophomore in college and they're
Hmm.
thinking science or engineering, they haven't really declared the major yet.
Hmm.
Are the chemistry courses like organic and inorganic, are they gatekeepers in their own sense?
I haven't taken inorganic chemistry. As a chemical engineer, you take a lot of chemistry. You take, your organic chemistry series. Um, but as a chemistry major, like dedicated chemistry major, you would take inorganic and other courses as well. I think the biggest gatekeeper chemistry course for a lot of people is physical chemistry, because that's where a lot of the math comes back.
And how, and is it taught is chemistry taught in very similar ways from high school to high school, from small college to small college, from very large schools like UC Irvine, to different schools? Is it taught in very similar ways?
It is. Yeah, chemistry, no matter what school you go to, it's basically going to be taught from the same textbook or a very similar textbook, and it's going to be taught in a very similar order and in a very similar manner. So it's going to be pretty consistent throughout, no matter what school you go to.
And do you rely on any feedback people give you about the classes that they're taking
Oh, of
that
course.
help
Yeah, I
you
mean
add
it's
content?
huge. Oh yeah, that's huge. We're not going to make content if someone doesn't need it, right? So basically, all of our content on our website, especially our tutorials, our element articles. We write a lot of element articles that are articles that talk about different elements. We write a lot of these because they're necessary. A lot of people look for them to get information about an element for whatever they need in high school, college, or even just curiosity's sake, right? So yeah, we're 100% always going to make content that people need.
Have you ever gotten a thank you letter from a student?
We have actually. We've gotten a few. Actually, no, we've gotten some from professors as well, believe it or not. I got one from a professor at UC Irvine. He looked at our site and he was like, "Oh wow, this was a really interesting site." Yeah, and it was great. He even gave us a donation and everything just to thank us for what we do. So it was great to see that. And that was very early on in Kim Talk as well.
Well, visually, I think you've got a really nice site. And how are you measuring your success with the site?
So we measure our success. We can measure our success in many ways. The biggest way we track success is based on the amount of visitors we get per month. So right now our visitors per month is just exponentially going up. Sorry, I hit my mic, but it's exponentially going up. But right now we're at like 20,000 visitors a month, and it doesn't even show any signs of slowing down. So that's
Wow.
one of our main metrics of showing how well we're doing on our site.
So if you followed the curve as it
Hmm.
slopes up,
Yep.
when do you hit like 100,000 visitors?
So we expect our traffic to double every month, based on what we've seen so far. So I mean, eventually, I mean, it'll start to slow down. I think what we're shooting for right now is around 50 to 60,000 visitors a month. Because obviously you get to a certain point, and it will plateau off and slow down, right? But if we can hold like 50 to 60,000 visitors a month, that puts us in a very competitive range with a lot of other websites in our field.
And how has the established community, like the American Chemical Society, like groups
Hmm.
that high school chemistry teachers belong to, college, chemistry teachers belong to, how have they reacted to the site?
Oh, it's actually pretty funny you say that. We literally, the second we have conversations with professors or any sort of, you know, teachers or whatever, they're like immediately sucked into it. They're like, "Oh wow, this is awesome," right? Especially with, even we've interacted with people on ACS, and it's been fantastic. I mean, everyone we've talked to basically has been super enthusiastic about it.
What is for you and the co-founders, what is the long-term motivation for the site? What would you like to add to the mission? How would you like to improve upon this version of the site into future versions of it?
I think like, our long term goal is to make I guess, a one stop shop, right? I guess in a sense that we kind of want to do a little bit of everything very well. Um, so the overall mission is to change the perception of chemistry. I mean, that's what we're going to do. That's what we want to get done. We don't want people to think, "Oh, chemistry's hard, chemistry's boring, blah blah blah." We don't want to hear that anymore. We want people to get out there and say, "Oh yeah, you do chemistry. That's awesome." Right? I mean, if we can start hearing more of that, that means we did our job very
Well, I think that chemistry is really important in so many different fields, not just chemical engineering
well.
and being a chemist in industry, but also being a physician.
Oh yeah, it's important. I mean, even everyday life. I mean, the unfortunate part of today is people are just chemically illiterate, right? It's sad, but it's true. I mean, it's you need chemistry. Even small chemistry knowledge can help you literally in everyday life.
I can tell you why certain foods taste good or taste bad.
It can also tell you, right? Like, I guess the biggest thing that you see a lot is, a lot of companies will put, oh, it contains natural ingredients or whatever on a food, like an item of food, right? And says chemical free. Well, everything's a chemical. And just because you put natural ingredients on something doesn't mean it doesn't contain chemicals, right? And
I,
not all
I
natural ingredients are good for you. So,
I watched Shark Tank, and one of the presenters who was funded made nutrition bars from crickets.
oh yeah, I think I've seen that one too.
So is that a mix of biology and chemistry coming together?
It is, yeah. So that's actually it's funny you bring that up. So ChemTalk isn't just for chemistry either. We want to start incorporating a lot of biochemistry and biology into what we do. Because at the end of the day, in the 21st century, you've got the biotech boom, right? Biotech's skyrocketing, right? And it's all chemistry at the end of the day. It's just chemistry, it looks a little different.
That's a really interesting point, and I'm wondering if that's going to be a way you expand your audience. Because
Hmm.
one thing about people who are, millennials
Right.
or Generation Z is they're more nutrition conscious than people like me who were born at the tail end of the baby boom.
Right. Right.
And they're more concerned about what they're putting in their body.
Hmm.
And I'm wondering, do you think you'll be adding content along those lines? Things like a contemporary problem, like, if I eat this that has this versus eating something else that has another mix of ingredients. One will improve my reaction time,
Hmm.
musculature, my eyesight, and so on.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, we'll be doing content like that probably from a more conceptual standpoint, right? Or more chemistry centered standpoint, right? So like everything you put in your body, at the end of the day, your body is just a big chemical reactor, right? Everything you put in your body is a chemical and it does react with something in your body, right? So if you can drive home that message to people that everything you put in your body is going to take part in some sort of a chemical reaction, whether it be a good one or a bad one, it is in your body, right? So if we can drive home that message to people, even from a chemistry related standpoint, I feel like people start to realize that, yeah, you got to be careful about what you eat and make sure you're eating the right things.
Cooking is a bit like chemistry, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Baking specifically is all chemistry. You know, if you look at, I mean, bakers are basically, or chemists are basically bakers, just don't lick the spoon, right? I mean, get
Uh,
down to it.
do you think chemists could ever do a cooking show format?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, it's probably actually been done before. I don't know, but I mean, oh, yeah, 100%.
Because I've watched these cooking shows with my wife, things like Top Chef
Hmm.
and so on, where the panel proposes a meal that they want you to make, and
Hmm.
there's ingredients, there's food and oils and spices, and
Yep.
those are all chemicals in some way, aren't
Oh,
they?
yeah, of course. I mean, when you cook meat, if you cook meat, there's something called the Maillard reaction. The Maillard reaction, I believe it's pronounced, but it's basically an actual chemical reaction that takes place in meat when you cook it. And that's what makes meat taste so good when you cook it as opposed to when it's raw. Right. So, yeah, I mean, all that cooking is 100% chemistry.
Could someone who makes a high school chemistry course or a chemistry textbook put things like that into the book over the
Mhm.
course of each chapter?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's very doable. I mean, it's, and it's a good way. I like, at least the way, I look at things, especially with chemistry, is if you can draw a connection to something you already know, it makes it that much easier to learn it, right? So if you can draw a connection to food, right, or like the Maillard reaction, for instance, you can draw a connection to, oh, I cooked a steak today, right? And you say, oh, wow, the Maillard reaction took place in the steak I just cooked. That makes it that much easier for that student to absorb that information because they drew a connection to something they already know.
Or let's say they drink orange juice versus Gatorade,
Yep.
for fitness or something like
Hmm.
that. Because I would bet I bet if a chemist was involved in, let's say you had a sports team,
Hmm.
if a chemist was involved in their nutrition, they would get different liquid things to drink and probably different foods to
Yep.
eat.
Yep. Yep. Funny you say that because that's what nutritionists a lot of times are. Nutritionists, when it comes down to it, are pretty proficient in chemistry, especially when it comes down to interactions with food in your body. So, yeah, chemistry, even like once again, you draw a parallel to another profession, right? You said physician, right? Nutritionist is another one that you could draw a parallel with.
So you're going to be a senior in college. Some of your colleagues are some are a little behind you, some are about the
Hmm.
same place as you. Is there an aspiration to have all of you run this full time, or do you want to hire someone to run it full time, or
Yeah. So the long term goal for, well, at least a lot of the co-founders is to eventually find somebody to run it for us, right? Because at the end of the day, we're gonna be busy. I mean, we can't obviously spend all of our lives, trying to run ChemTalk. But in the meantime, yeah, we're running it right now. And yeah, the long term goal is to have somebody who's more proficient than we are in running a nonprofit take over and run it the way we want it to be run.
Well, suppose one or all of you got on Shark Tank
Hmm.
and you figured there was a revenue model that made the site profit making.
Hmm.
Would you then want to run it full time?
I guess that's a thing to consider, right? I guess from our perspective right now, we haven't really thought about that. I think most of us have just thought it's just been a kind of a creative outlet for a lot of us. So I don't think a lot of us have thought about potentially seeing it as a profitable site. I think most of us are just at the point where we just want we have one goal and it's to change the perception of chemistry, right? But yeah, we haven't. I don't think most of us have actually thought about that yet.
I mean, the way the site's designed, it's very user friendly. I'll vouch for that, having looked at it
Mm-hmm.
myself. Um, in some ways, with the content, it's kind of like all of you like the same music, and you have a gathering place to talk about how the artists are doing in concert,
Right.
and whether you can go hear them, or how the artists are doing with their latest, whether it's an online album or a MP, or an
Right.
actual album you buy. It's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like a place to talk about this stuff.
Right.
And where it really impressed me is there's really I've never heard of a platform to tutor people in chemistry before.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see a huge market for that.
We were thinking about that too. It's. I mean, from our perspective, we have a person on our advisory board who brought that point up actually in a meeting not too long ago. And it brought that to mind, right? Because a lot of even tutoring sites, right, especially for chemistry, a lot of them are very, I guess, monopolistic in a sense that they charge these very high rates, and they're very hard to, I guess, they're very they're just not really friendly for a lot of tutors, right? Um, at least from his perspective. And he said that if we can, as a nonprofit, get a whole list of ChemTalk approved tutors or whatnot, I mean that would be very not only beneficial to us, 'cause it'd bring people to our site, but it'd be beneficial to college students, who are tutors, right, and just trying to tutor some other people, right, and in a course that they love, right, and that's perfect. I mean that's what tutors should be, right? A tutor should be someone who gets a good grade in college and is like, oh wow, I really want to teach more people about this subject, right? So we definitely want to create a platform for tutors on our site where they can post and we can get people in touch with tutors and they can use our site. And it's a very symbiotic relationship from that point of view.
Well, and I want to, that's a perfect way for us to conclude our conversation.
Hmm.
I want to thank you for spending the time with me
Yeah, thank you.
to tell me about ChemTalk. This is a very unique kind of instructional platform mainly, I would say, for high school students who are taking their first chemistry
Yep.
course, maybe for people who are also taking AP, and trying to make an impression on the college of their dreams,
Yep.
so to speak. And I encourage those who are taking chemistry and their parents and teachers to visit ChemTalk. Thank thank you and have a good day.
Thank you.